and it let out this blood-curdling, guttural scream.
On the side of the road, he sees a deer carcass and something eating on it, which he thought was a bear. And as the lights hit it, it stood up. And, like, this gives me chills talking about it. He said it stood up and it had the face of a man.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bigfoots of America podcast show. I'm your host, Bryan Sawyer, coming at you. This is episode number 37. And all right, everybody, thanks for being here. Now, today's a pretty interesting episode. And I preface that because my guest today, whose name is Brenda Goodwin, her and I are starting to, kind of go way back. She is a moderator on our private group site on Facebook called Bigfoots of Michigan and the Bigfoots of America podcast show. And I kind of got to know Brenda and that aspect as a moderator. And as we got to know each other more, she came out to our town hall meeting. We started talking more and more. She got more comfortable with being in front of the camera. And then, hey, I jumped out to Kalamazoo County, Michigan, and I interviewed Brenda Goodwin for our Bigfoots of Michigan TV series, season 3. What is so amazing about Brenda's story is, I guess you could say Brenda's paranormal story is that she lives in an area what I call the Michigan Skinwalker Ranch. There have been so many different types of paranormal encounters by Brenda, her mother, surrounding neighbors, all of that. And so it's actually a crazy story. And yeah, I call it the Michigan Skinwalker Ranch. So I'm so excited to get Brenda in on a podcast show. And let's go ahead and bring her on stage. All right. Hey, Brenda, you there?
Hi, Bryan.
Hey, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness, thanks for being on. When it took a while, I don't know if it was nerves or whatever.
Yeah,
You,
on my
uh,
end.
and that's okay. You eased into it, but now you are delivering like I cannot imagine. Most people have one, maybe two encounters that they talk about, and then some stories and all of that. But you live at a very interesting location. Like I told the folks before, what I now call the Michigan Skinwalker Ranch. So, yeah, you know what? Instead of saying some of the stories myself, I'm going to let you go ahead and take over your episode. Why don't you tell us how you got started? Any kind of stories from your childhood? Just kind of tell us how everything has unfolded. Go ahead.
Well, like you, when I was younger, I watched In Search of with Leonard Nimoy and the Bigfoot episode, and saw the Patty film, and watched the Bionic Man with the Bigfoot episode. I read a book, I remember, when I was about 12, about some strange occurrences and creatures. I read there was a short story in there about Bigfoot sighting in Sister Lakes, Michigan, back in the 60s.
Mm.
And I thought to myself, because before then I had never heard about them being sighted anywhere other than like the Pacific Northwest or Canada, Alaska, not here in Michigan. Of course, at that point, I just thought, it could have just been a story or a fluke. And as I got older, every once in a while there would be some odd things happening. I remember when I was 17, I don't think I didn't tell you this when you came down here to Kalamazoo County. But when I was 17, my mom's champion barrel racing horse passed away of colic. We had to put her down. It was just too far gone. She had a twisted gut. She was old. We buried her that day. My parents were on vacation, and I didn't tell them till they got back. I didn't want to spoil their vacation, but some neighbors helped me out, and a guy called a excavator to bury her in the back pasture, which at that point in time, I had taken the horses in the rest of the horses, put them in their stalls. And then later that night, I went out to let them back out into the pasture, and had a Australian Shepherd with me. I opened the stall doors. None of the horses were coming out of the stalls. They stood there in the stall doorways, just standing there. They would not leave their stalls. I looked at the dog at the other end of the aisle and the dog was looking straight down the aisle at the open door past the stalls. And I'm like, what are you looking at? And so I looked down that way, and I caught a glimpse of a ghostly horse figure. And then as soon as I looked at it straight on, it just disappeared. And then I looked back at the dog. Then the dog looked at me. And then I looked at the horses. And then the horses started walking out of the stalls and went on out into the pasture, out of the barn. I'm like, I was thinking the horses must have seen it too. I don't know. It was very, very strange. And I do remember my mom telling me that shortly after she had moved in her place, she had a few odd happenings too. Well, the one I won't mention because I think we went through that in the episode. So, but she did see.
You can say it here, different platform. You can go ahead and talk about
Yeah.
it here. Yeah.
But yeah, shortly after she put her house up on this property, which is just not too far down the road at all from where I grew up, maybe half a mile. But actually, the two properties are only not even eighth of a mile separated by someone else's property. So like all this weird stuff happens like within a mile of each other. And I don't know if it's, something to do with the location, something with its history. I know my mom said that when they bought the property of the farm where I grew up, her dad did find some arrowheads and stuff on the property. So that's, indication that the natives were around there. And because I know you had asked me about that when you came down here. But yeah, she said that there were quite a few arrowheads found on the property. And so she had seen, shortly after she put her house up, this must have been toward the late 80s. She said she saw saw something with its head over a fence that's in front of a propane tank. And this fence is about, at least 5 foot tall, I would guess. And she had heard some commotion outside and some growling. And she did have some dogs out in a dog run out there. She opened the window and stuck her head out to see what was going on. And the dogs were barking a little bit, but she heard some other growling coming from the fence in front of the propane tank. And she saw a big, large head with ears and red glowing eyes. And it growled at her. So she she ended up, she
Whoa.
closed the window and she watched for a few minutes, and to see what was going on. But she said she heard a couple more growls, but then after that, then it got quiet because whatever it was must have left. But I had her. I looked up images online. I had her draw a picture, a sketch of what she saw, and I also looked up some images online because I don't think she at that time she didn't know what a dog man was.
Right.
You know, um, she's 91 now, and she yeah, I didn't really hear about Dogman until, like the 90s, when there was that one guy hoaxed a sighting, and then that guy, the radio station guy, made up this song, and then it,
Right. Right.
that story kind of exploded. But aside from the hoaxed film that was made to look like it was, back in the 70s.
Hmm.
I don't know if you know about that film. And the guy
Yeah.
came
Is
out
that the
and
one?
admitted that he hoaxed it. He was in it like a ghillie suit, and you
Yes.
know, you
Yes. I
know,
know exactly what you're talking
yeah,
about.
running
Yes.
running on all
There's,
fours toward the camera. Yeah. But
yeah.
yeah, what I didn't realize was that there were other people that were coming forward and reporting sightings
Okay.
at that time. And I, just had recently, like within the last 5 years or so, started hearing of dogman sightings.
Okay.
So I looked up.
I'll make sure I
What?
include that picture, that sketch that your mother
Yeah,
drew. I'll make sure I kind of stick that in right about now. So,
and that image, I was looking up dogman images online, and I showed her a handful of them, and I asked her, well, which one? Because she didn't see any body. She just saw the head sticking over the fence.
right.
And the fence was far enough away from the propane tank that it couldn't have been standing on the propane tank.
Okay.
It had to have just been standing on the other side of that fence.
Okay. And
So
I've seen that spot. Yeah.
my guess is it was at least 6 foot tall for its head
Yeah.
to be, sticking up over that 5 foot tall fence.
For sure.
And so yeah, I showed her about a half a dozen different images, and she picked out one that she said looked most like the head of what she saw.
Okay.
And so I think I sent you that picture too. But
Yeah. I'll double check, but yeah, I'll include that picture as well.
but it had, yeah, that image that she picked out um had red glowing eyes.
Okay.
And
Cool.
which then, when I was living with her, this had to have been maybe 2015. I got home from work one night and was walking from the garage to the house, and I saw something not too far from where she had her sighting of some red glowing eyes. I saw something with some red glowing eyes on a fence or on the other side of a fence, which kind of hissed at me real weird. And this was nighttime, but I saw
Okay.
red glowing eyes, and I wasn't, shining a flashlight that way or anything like that. But what I saw kind of it almost looked like it was hairless. I
Okay.
was seeing flashes of, like pale looking, almost like skin or something. I didn't know if it was something sitting on the fence or just on the other side of the fence, but after it was kind of a combination of a hiss and a growl, and then it took off, and I could hear it running in that pasture toward the woods after it left the fence area. And I didn't
Wow.
know what it was. I didn't know if it was an alien or an animal or or what.
And this was
And
shorter. This one was
yeah,
shorter,
it
wasn't it?
was shorter. It was maybe 4 foot tall,
Okay.
maybe a little bit bigger, but something because that fence is shorter in that area, about a
Yeah,
foot or so shorter.
that's interesting to me because that when you first told me about this, I mean it was the next day or something, I had heard about that there's been little people sighted in Michigan. And
Yeah.
basically, they look like miniature Bigfoot, but they're only anywhere from, 18 inches to 2 or 3 feet tall. And so
Huh.
that was, yeah, that was something. So it's like, okay, is it a baby Sasquatch or a baby dog man, or is it the little people? So, yeah.
Well, what I saw, it didn't look like it had hair, or if it did, it was like a pale or grayish color. That's
Okay.
why initially I was thinking it, could have been an alien or something.
Gotcha. Or something,
So
if it's losing its hair, yeah,
something with mange,
maybe, yeah, maybe it's
some
older.
mangy critter.
Right.
But yeah, so um, yeah, I don't know if you were gonna include in the episode or not. I think I might have mentioned that in 1987, and I remember the year distinctly because it was just so mind blowing. I started seeing like little orbs. Um, oh, not even as big as a pencil eraser. That kind of float across the room about 6, 7 feet and then just disappear. The first time I saw it, I was wondering what the heck was that, and I wondered if used to wear a watch. Everybody used to wear watches when they didn't have cell phones.
Right,
I
right.
wondered if it
Swatches.
was a passing car in front of our front window. I was living closer to downtown Kalamazoo uh, with my boyfriend at the time, and I wondered if a passing car had reflected some light off my watch or something like that. So I tried to recreate the light reflection and I could not. And
Okay.
I, and then throughout the years, I see these things very frequently. Um, I do remember most of which were just like a yellowish orange glowing, and they were traveling in like a straight line for, like I said, maybe 6 feet, and then they disappear.
Mm.
And then I remember I was I had a mobile home, and I was playing on the internet. This is like the late '90s. Um, had got AOL. You remember when AOL was the big thing? Oh, you got mail. You got mail.
Right,
Yay!
right.
Anyway, so I was playing on the internet and surfing the web, and um, I just started thinking about, I just couldn't get it out of my mind what these little tiny orbs were that keep appearing to me. And then I thought, well, it's odd that they're yellowish orange and they just travel in a straight line. And no sooner had I thought that to myself than right between me and the computer screen, the big clunky monitor that we used to have, those old style monitors. Um, right between me and the monitor, there passes a whitish blue orb, and right in front of my face, it does a loop de loop and then goes on and disappears. And I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
and I'm left my jaw dropped, and I'm like, okay, they're not all yellowish orange. I guess they're whitish blue too, and they don't all travel in a straight line. Because it's like as if
Wow.
something or someone was sending me a message like, no, they're not all yellowish orange and travel in a straight line. And
Right.
since then, I tell you, I've seen both. And sometimes I see one or the other daily, sometimes,
Wow.
if not every other day, but pretty frequently. And when my dad passed away in 2018, I was with him when he left us, and right at that moment I was standing beside his bed, and a whitish bluish orb came out of him and traveled straight to me. And I took that as his spirit leaving his body and coming
Wow.
toward me and acknowledging that he knew that I was there with him when he passed.
Right.
And so that's when well, even before then, I kind of had the sense that they might have been spirits, but I never, I don't know who they are. I don't know what they want. There's been no communication as far as, who they are or what they want. They just appear and leave.
Hmm.
So it's, uh, I had a friend suggest that they may have been fairies, and I like your fairy story, because every time you recount that story, you get up close to the camera and you go,
That's what happened. It's
love that.
crazy, man.
I
Oh
love
my
your
gosh.
depiction of that fairy that you saw. I love it. It cracks me up every time. But
Good.
yeah, I mean, I see no forms, shapes of any kind in these little orbs. I don't know. I don't know if they're fairies, but I know that one that I saw in my dad's hospital room, that wasn't a fairy. I wouldn't think.
Right.
I
Right.
think that.
Well, I just
So
recently heard. Here's a story for you. A story of a guy. This is in the Uari Forest. Now, I've been down there. I got this little stuffed animal from back there. We went out there and did a quick visit. But one of the eyewitnesses from the Uari Forest in North Carolina, him and his dad and I think his son had witnessed a couple of Bigfoot with these blue glowing eyes coming towards their tent.
no.
And then once the Bigfoot realized they were being watched, they kind of retreated, but then kind of came back in the shape of orbs. And the father or the grandfather said that he looked deeply into one of the orbs and could see the Sasquatch's face, like in the middle of the orb. Is that crazy or what?
Yeah, you know what? I've heard a couple accounts like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that actually that reminds me of so the neighbor I was telling you about previously, that lives further down the road about 3 miles, that has the dark brown black clan that
Mm-hmm.
frequents his property.
Right.
He's video orbs on
Oh,
his camera.
really?
He showed me this stuff on his camera. These orbs, from what I could tell, there may be 5-6 foot around in
Wow.
circumference. He had a recording of, there were three of them, I think, on this video that he took, and they were pulsing different colors, just pulsing different
Wow.
colors. And you can almost kind of see what's in the nucleus of it. It's almost like some kind of shape in it. So it kind of makes me wonder if they travel in those big orbs.
Oh, without a doubt. Wait, and this is
Yeah,
the eye. This is the. I just remembered something. This is the eyewitness. Well, he doesn't want to be on camera. He doesn't want to be public about having a
right. This
Sasquatch
is not
playing
the
on his
friend that you
property.
met. This is
This
the
is the
guy you
one where
haven't
the
met. Right. Oh, the
right, where
pond
the
story.
the Bigfoot taking
The
a dump in
pond
his
story.
pond.
Yes. So did I tell you about that pond story in the episode?
I can't remember, but go ahead.
So he,
Tell it here.
well, he's got this, like, it's a blue heeler dog that, he says this dog is fearless, except for when the Bigfoot around. And by the way, he did get a couple of face shots that he was going to send me one of the pictures, but he didn't text it to me. I think he's afraid that, I mean, he doesn't want, um, he doesn't want people coming around hunting them, or, he doesn't want the government around or anything. So he might have had second thoughts about sending me that picture, but in a couple of his pictures, you can see their faces. And so this dog, though, this dog is scared of them, doesn't want anything to do with them. He went out one day. He's got a pond behind his house, and this dog went out with him. And then when he got closer to the pond, this dog turned around, tucked tail, and ran up to the back door of the house and was just laid there, kind of whimpering, wanted to go back in the house. The dog didn't want to be outside with him. So he puts the dog inside. He's out there. He's got this. I don't know, if I forget if it was a pool skimmer or like a fishing net or something like that, but he told me that he thinks those Sasquatch are pooping in his pond. And so he's out there and he's scooping this poo out of his pond, and all the while grumbling and mumbling. And then he finally says, you guys need to, excuse me, you guys need to quit shitting in my pond. And the next thing you know, from the far side of the pond, where his woods start, just on the other side of his pond, there comes a rock thrown from the woods into the pond, and it splashes in the far end of his pond. And I just cracked up laughing when he told me that. And I said, I tell you what, I think that's a sign to you that they'll shit where they want. So,
Exactly.
and he says, yeah, I think it was too. And we all had a good laugh about that. But yeah, he doesn't really feel threatened by him. He said that he saw one pretty close to the front of his house before about 1:30 or 2:00 in the morning one night. He said that was a little unnerving, that it was, came up so close to the house, because it was right in his front yard.
Right.
And maybe 10 feet from the house. He said that made him a little nervous, but he still doesn't seem to get a threatening feeling from him, other
Right.
than they're going to shit in his pond if they want to. What are you going to do?
He's out there grumbling, complaining, and they're like, screw you, pal. We'll do what we
Yeah,
want. We were here first.
I thought that was the funniest thing. But yeah,
Great story.
I've had a lot of different unusual things happen to me through the years. And then when I about 3 or 4 months before I had my sighting, which was 2004, I believe it was. Yeah, it was 2003 or 2004. I was camping out in the woods, and I just got back there from hanging out with the neighbors, and went back there. I had 2 Australian Shepherds with me. I was gonna camp. I had my tent up. I usually, just stayed there on the weekends with the dogs, and instead of driving home, that's no good, driving after you've been drinking. So
Mm-hmm.
I learned my lesson that way. As far as that goes, from years and years ago. So yeah, I was went back there about 1:30 or 2 in the morning and turned my boombox on, started building up a fire, and I hear this long-winded shriek, sort of a combination shriek and scream. And I shut my boombox off. I was listening to this thing, and it was coming from the west and in the woods. And it was just so blood curdling and god awful that it's the kind of noise that just makes you want to get right with God. And but by then I was saved, born again by then. Since like 1998.
Okay.
So yeah, I heard that and it sounded like a woman getting choked to death. But you could tell it was coming from something with a large lung capacity. And I've heard similar sounds on the internet in the last couple of years that sound very like it, but the duration of this was just drawn out. And I remember thinking to myself, well, if that's a woman getting choked, I would think she'd be dead by now. So
Right.
it just kept going. And to me, it felt like minutes, but it wasn't that long. It was, maybe 30 seconds or so. But after that, I was just terrified. That noise just terrified me. I didn't know what to do. I'm like, well, I'm just gonna, pray to God for protection, and I'll stay out here and I'll leave the radio off and I'll listen. And I heard nothing in the woods after that noise.
Wow. And once you turn the
Nothing.
stereo off.
The woods went silent. And then
Wow.
about 20 minutes later, well, and I thought, well, if it's like a big cat or something like that, I'll just keep throwing wood on the fire, thinking that, keeping the fire going will deter a woodland creature from, getting close to
Right.
the fire. So I just kept the fire going, and I thought, yep, and I had my hatchet. Didn't have a gun with me, but I had a hatchet, and I thought, well, and I have the dogs for protection. And I looked over, and they're both laying there, sleeping. Like, are you kidding me? Lot good protection you're gonna be. So, but yeah, about 15, 20 minutes after I heard that, I felt like I was being watched. And oddly enough, I felt like I was being watched from up in the trees from above.
Oh.
So that was, and if you ever saw that movie Jeepers Creepers, that's what I had on my mind. And I'm like, ugh. So
Okay.
I'm like, yeah, I know I ain't getting any sleep tonight. So I stayed up all night. Couldn't hear anything in the woods. There were no normal animal sounds or, insects or anything. You usually hear
Wow.
some owls or raccoons chitter chattering away or something, but nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, and all the while the dogs were sleeping, they never even woke up. It got daylight about, 6:30 or 7. It started getting daylight back then. It was because it was in the summertime. And about 20 minutes before dawn, it was just starting to get light. And then I felt like I wasn't being watched anymore. And then the dogs arose and started moving around. But what I found odd was that they laid there the whole time not waking once, not getting up to shift positions, not getting up to go to the bathroom or anything like that, which was
Wow.
pretty unusual.
Yeah, that's
Dogs,
weird. Usually animals are, on guard
yeah,
or they stir when they hear a
they're
sound.
not going to be laying there for um oh, is it maybe 4 or 5 hours at a time, not moving,
Right.
not waking once. They just both laid there the whole time. So I don't know if I wonder if they, if it turns out that, so the noise, I think I attribute that now to Bigfoot, well,
Sure.
forest people, but um yeah, it makes me wonder if they have a way to manipulate the other animals too, as well as people, as far as like they I hear that they can make people feel uneasy or even queasy.
Oh yeah,
um
even falling asleep. I've heard that.
yeah,
Val Savala talked about
yeah,
that
so
where
I
he
wonder
felt
if
like he was getting
they
drowsy.
I wonder if it put the dogs to sleep
Mm,
and kept them
yeah.
sleeping, because
Yeah.
maybe maybe they don't want to deal with dogs if they don't have to,
Right.
um or maybe they don't want to harm dogs if they don't have to.
No, I think
So
they don't like dogs.
yeah,
Every
they don't like
eyewitness.
dogs. Yeah,
Yeah, I've
yeah, I
got a
know.
yeah.
So
That
if they can avoid trying to avoid dealing with them, they
yeah, that
they do. um I mean, because I've heard that if they have to defend themselves, they do it. They usually
yeah,
kill the dogs.
yeah.
But no, mine were sleeping. Um, may have been put to sleep.
Right.
Um, but yeah, then it was about 3 or 4 months later that I actually saw it. And when I did, and it was in the same area. Um, I was it took years um to process what I saw. I would be second guessing myself. Did I really see that? You know, and at first I wasn't even putting two and two together as far as the noise I heard and what I saw, until I started opening up online and looking into it, and joined your group and heard of other people hearing that sound too, and attributing that to Sasquatch. So it made sense to me that I heard it before I saw it. And it
Okay.
makes me wonder if that because I stood my ground basically and stayed out at the campsite rather than fleeing the woods. um in a way it kind of it showed itself to me.
Mm,
I wonder that. I feel like had it not moved I wouldn't have seen it.
okay.
So I feel like it allowed me to see it. And oh, Brian, you know what? There is one thing too that I had been thinking of. Um, since I had started seeking the truth and had um, dived into the Bible, more notably the New Testament, the Good News, started with that. Um, so I and then was saved, and then about a year later was baptized too. And
Congrats.
yeah, thank you. Um, I yeah, happy I did it. Haven't looked back. You know, repented and have not regretted it. Of
Amen.
course, I'm not perfect.
No.
Nobody is except for Jesus, but I'm
Right.
forgiven. Thank
That's right.
God I'm forgiven. And so anyway, but God knew I was seeking the truth. because when I started reading the Bible, I decided, well, you know what? I'm going to believe this to be true. And because I just, at that point in my life, I was emotional rock bottom, and I needed to know the truth. So, and I found the truth in the Word. And so what I was thinking about recently was that, so about 5 years after I was saved, and, by seeking the truth and, of Jesus, um, did God allow me to see the truth that Sasquatch exists also.
Could be a gift.
Am I seeing the truth? Not just the truth that Jesus exists, but also other truths.
Yeah.
And then, back then, and there were not too many indicators that, I thought maybe it was a fluke. I never would have thought that, I thought, well, maybe it was a migratory Sasquatch or something. Maybe it was nomadic, just moving through or something. But, as the years went on, I was seeing smaller indications that, there are still some odd things happening. And like some whistles, like human type whistles coming from a swamp area behind the neighbor's pole barn that I hear
Okay.
when I go out to relieve myself, and always seem to be doing that. But yeah, who's going to be
With your
standing in the middle of a swamp whistling at 1:30 in the morning?
Oh, right. And
That's
that is a huge way to communicate that and owl sounds. For the folks at home and the people listening, what exactly unfolded with your sighting? What happened?
well, okay. So me and some friends were at the neighbor's house, well, in his garage. We were out there having a good time, having a little get together party, and um, so I his wife had went. His wife at the time went in the house and went to bed. And, um, I had to relieve myself, so I went around behind his garage. It was nighttime, but it was a full moon,
Mhm.
and I was behind his garage, squatting, and I was facing to the north, um, facing his. He had a goat shed there. Well, the shed's still there, um,
Right, right.
and as I was going, I was looking in that direction, and I saw this tall, hairy creature, about 8 foot tall, and there was enough moonshine on it, shining on it, moonshine, shining on it. No, I didn't have any moonshine that night. I did have something to drink, but I was not that drunk, and I don't hallucinate. So anyway, but there was enough moon shining on it that I could see it was like a reddish brown color,
Mm.
and it was walking in just this fluid, natural gait, and it passed through this open area behind the goat shed and on into the woods and headed to the west, headed into that direction where I had heard that sound originate some months before.
Yeah.
And I I just was blinking, and I got up, and I went inside. I didn't say anything to anybody for quite some time because excuse me, I was I was in fear that if they believed me, they would go out and try to shoot at something out there. And if they didn't believe me, they'd ridicule me.
Right.
And so I didn't say anything for a while. A few days or so later, I did say something to my my good friend, and he believed me. He said that, he's felt like he's been watched out in the woods, and we grew up playing out in those woods and stuff, and um, so I,
Yeah,
I
and I've
started wondering, you know, have they been there all this
yeah,
time
I've
and
seen
have
that
they watched us
location,
grow up?
and
Do
oh,
they
right,
know
right.
us?
I've seen that location. Yeah. And then how it correlates. So you saw that years ago,
Yeah,
that sighting, and then I've been to that location, and then how it correlates with, kind of a recent sighting, I'd say,
yeah,
with your neighbors. So speak up about that. I mean,
yeah,
just
because he put
what,
out a
50 yards
prefab
away?
little cabin, um, right there into the woods, at his backyard, just, you know, what, feet away from his goat shed. And yeah, he's had taps on the walls and the windows, and he's had a face looking in at him. And
Yep.
yeah, and then
What's his
he
name?
saw
I,
one
I
walking
forgot.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and yeah, and he put a TV out there, and I think they started watching his TV, and he fell
That's
asleep with
right.
the TV on, and he started hearing the taps. That's when the taps started, was when he put the TV out there. And but he did see one looking in at him through the window before he put the TV out there. But when you put the TV out there, that's when the taps on the walls and the with the window started. And
That's when we were joking that the taps meant turn the channel. I don't like this
yeah,
channel.
I said, well, you know what? Um, I said, try turning the channel if it happens again. And it happened again a couple weeks later. And I said, did you turn the channel? And he said, yeah. And I said, what happened? And he says, nothing. I didn't hear the taps anymore. I said, well, there you
Wow.
go. they, did- they evidently like watching TV. They didn't like what he was watching, so they wanted him to turn the channel. So yeah,
Right.
yeah. But I did not get a threatening feeling when I saw that. I just, excuse me, I got a feeling like it was just curious, just watching us,
Yep.
wanting to know, what these kooky humans were doing, and
Oh yeah.
hanging out in the garage till all hours of the morning, being idiots.
Yep.
So I got a sense of curiosity about it. I didn't get a threatening feeling about it. Um, but yeah, then I think they know that I had in the last few years started delving more into um what they are and learning more about them. So I'm been having more activity, and there's just last December I found prints in one of the horses pastures, and right next to a deer skid, and I think they were hunting, and I there were three different size prints I got, and I think they were hunting with the juveniles, because my friend was the one he saw was well, actually there's two. It might have been the same one that he saw twice, because he said it was about the same height, and he
Okay.
did say the one he saw was reddish brown also. So I'm guessing there's a reddish brown clan here.
Yeah.
um and then yeah, he he's seen I think he might be seeing the same juvenile, possibly, but there were three different size prints that I found, and the biggest one was the one right next to the deer skid in the field.
Okay.
And so I'm certain that it was the adult that caught it, but I'm guessing that they're showing the young how to hunt.
Yeah.
Um, and then I found one that was about the same size as my foot, and then I found one that was a little smaller yet. And I wear a size 10 women's. So, I don't know. Can't imagine. I can't imagine that maybe the 5-footer that Bobby saw could have had the smallest print. I don't know, but yeah, it's just really strange. That I think they just know that they know who is aware of them and who isn't, I think.
Right.
Um and I think they know that they're that I've been, learning more. So maybe that's why the increased activity.
Yeah.
In the spring, I think it was May, my mom heard wood knocks, and then about 4 days later, I heard them too from the same place, just off the side of her backyard,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
saw one, what looked like a juvenile up in a tree further into the woods,
Yep.
looking
Yep.
down at me.
Yep. And
And
I can't wait for people to see that on the TV show, your episode for season 3, because it really gives you a feel for the land. You've got a natural spring fed pond,
yep,
and then you've got creeks that run
drain
off it.
ditches
And
that go
yeah.
past through there, and there's swamp area too.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and then yeah, well then when my mom was out of town when I heard the wood knocks, and when she got back, we were kind of comparing notes, and we they came from the same tree, the exact same tree. And
Okay.
we walked over there, as at the edge of the yard, and there was a tree fallen right there, but it hadn't fallen completely. It was resting on some other old trees that had fallen,
Yep.
and the top of it had like a Y shape. And I thought, well, I wonder if they did
Mm-hmm.
this intentionally,
Right.
leaving that Y shaped log on top like that.
Yep.
So my mom and I found a little branch, um, and I walked up there and just stuck it in the dirt right kind of near that Y-shaped
Awesome.
log. And
Awesome.
about a week later, I had um at my place, there's a tire swing, um and this kind of small round branch had fallen. I assumed had fallen out of the tree into this tire swing, but it was um wedged in there in a strange way that I couldn't see how it could have fallen in that way, because it was like through this rope area that was really tight together, and then it was straight down and wedged into the opening of the tire.
Mm.
And I didn't really think anything of it at first. I started pulling it out of there. I was going to throw it in the fire pile, the fire pit area, just which I take branches out of the yard and throw them there and end up burning them later. But as I pulled it out, and then I looked at the top of it, and it had kind of a Y shape. I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
wonder if that
Yeah.
was left intentionally for me.
Yeah. For the folks
So
at home, real quick, the Y stick, we believe, is a sign of friendships. Angie Elizabeth first kind of, lit that fire, and then I had encounters of Y sticks, and even Brenda. I did a quick little episode with Jerry Lentz, and I've been editing it this past week and going through the footage, and
Mm-hmm.
where he had found this bone, and he's like, oh, I wonder if they're gifting me back because of all my interactive games and all that kind of stuff. So at the time when I'm filming it, I'm thinking of filming and him talking and keeping everything in frame. Well, I'm going through the footage over the past few days, editing, and I realized there's a Y stick there with the bone on top
Oh,
of a log. I freaked. So yeah, so for the folks at home, a Y stick is a recognition of the Sasquatch, knowing that we know that we've seen them and we're aware of their presence. And so it's almost like a sign of friendship and mutual respect. Like, okay, we know we're back here, and so yeah, it's almost like a sign of friendship and peace and all of that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I left that, just in case they had left um that bigger one there at my mom's. So that's why I stuck that smaller one in the ground there. And then, like I said, it was less than a week before I found that one in the tire swing. And then, of course, by the time I realized that, it had a Y shape at the end, I had pulled it out so that I couldn't quite stick it back in the way it was without breaking it because it was so small
Wow.
around.
Okay.
And then, so so then for a week or so, I just rested the top of it on the rope. I just left it
Okay.
there. And then about a week later, um, I was walking past the tree, and a branch came crashing down out of the tree, and I went over and looked at that, and it was pretty big around. It was a couple inches in diameter, and I
Oh,
grabbed that. I was gonna throw that in the fire pit. I looked at that, and that had a Y shape.
okay.
So I took that and I shoved that in the tire swing the way the original smaller one had been.
Oh, cool.
I
Cool.
was because that one it was bigger round, so I couldn't break it. So I did
Yeah.
replace the smaller one that I found that was originally there. I did replace that with that bigger round one. So I do have that one um, manipulated and wedged down into the tire swing the way the original one is. And then I took the original one and just rested it against there too. So I got some weird, kind of Blair Witch Project wood branch thing going on at the tire swing. It's,
No, I mean, we're
oh,
giggling about this. We're giggling about this, and then
yeah,
we second guess ourselves, and we're like, "Am I nuts?" But everything with forest people, because that's what you're dealing with. There's different types of these things, and yours to me are leaning more towards the forest people, and everything they do is so very subtle that you
yes,
almost wouldn't notice it.
yes. See, that's why I wanted to leave it there because I didn't want, if they did indeed put it there, I didn't want to offend them,
Right, right. Yeah,
you
no,
know?
I think you made the right move, because then as they pass through, they'll see that, and they'll just kind of be aware of that. Yeah, no, I think that's great. Hey,
Yeah,
didn't you? I'm looking at some of my notes here. Didn't you have like a UFO sighting? And this is not. So we
yeah.
talked about orbs, but this particular sighting was not an orb. You said it was more
No,
mechanical. But yeah,
this
go
was,
ahead with
yeah,
that.
this was about 3 years ago, and I um was letting the dogs out, and right over the top of the house, um, come come this really quick. It was a bright white, um, and it was moving very fast. I couldn't tell if it was round or tic tac shape. But it could have been round, and it just made a tic tac shape to me because it was going so fast. But it just went, and I didn't hear it, I just saw it. There was no noise to it, and it just went over really quick, and it got to this wooded patch in the back field behind my house, and it got to the trees, and it arced up, and headed
Okay.
straight up and disappeared. And it just
Okay.
was gone. But it
Very
was like
quick.
moving very fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no way it could have been a plane or drone or anything like that. It was just moving too fast. And
So
at first I thought, wow, I mean, said a falling star, but falling stars don't fall up. They fall down. They arc down. And
yeah.
this arced up. So never seen anything like that. It arced up and then it just disappeared. So
Wow.
that's
So you've
weird.
got so already we've got, and this is in your TV episode as well, your for the TV show season 3. So you've had Dogman, you've got some kind of little creature, some old dude, some balding dude. You've got Sasquatch sightings by you, sightings by your neighbor. Um, you've got orbs. You've got a spaceship. Let's talk about one of my favorite stories, the Phantom Horse. What happened there?
Oh, the one my mom saw?
Oh, that's right. This is the second Phantom Horse. You told the black Phantom Horse
Yeah,
in the
the
beginning.
one that
Yeah, the
I
one your
saw when
mom
I was
saw.
17. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
where I grew up. But my mom had saw one, a white one, um, in the next field over from her property, and she saw a loose horse running around in this field, and this was wintertime, and she wondered if it was some neighbor's horse. She didn't recognize the horse, but that doesn't really mean anything. There could be someone around the corner up the road or something that we're not familiar with their horses. So anyway, she went out to um look for this horse, and she went to where she saw it, and there were no tracks. There were no prints in the snow whatsoever, and it was just gone because she saw it running a little ways, and then it was just like disappeared. But
Wow.
yeah, she couldn't really believe her eyes, but she thought, oh, it's a real horse. So she went out there to look for it, and so she could try to catch it and get it back to its owner. At this point, she's still thinking it's a real horse, even after she did see it disappear. Um, so she, like I said, she went out there, and there were no tracks,
My goodness.
no tracks whatsoever.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff. And then you saw, what was it, a baby deer or something?
Oh yeah. So yeah, last summer, I was going to work. Um, I noticed a doe laying at the side of the road, just not too far up the road. And then um, when I came home from work, there was a fawn had got hit too during the day. Um, Maybe, I don't know, 6, 8 feet from her. So the fawn had, during the day, sometime while I was at work, because it wasn't there in the morning. The fawn wasn't. The doe was, but the fawn wasn't. But sometime during the day while I was at work, the fawn got hit too, right there near where its mother was. And then I got out of work, and um, I was letting the dogs out, and I was sitting on the back steps, and I was um, hearing some bleat, like the little fawns bleat for their moms,
Mm-hmm.
and or like sheep kind of bleating like that, making bleat sounds. So, and I look down the lane. There's a lane between two fields there, and I saw this fawn crossing the lane, and it got to this woven wire fence, and this fawn had kind of a cloudy look to it, which looked kind of odd to me, but like, oh, it's looking for its mom. And I looked around, I didn't see any other deer around, but this fawn went passed right through this woven wire fence. And there's there's no hole in it. I mean, it's like the woven wire is like this. It's no way it couldn't have fit through that woven wire fence.
Mm-hmm.
It just went through it, and it didn't jump it because I was watching it. It didn't jump it, and it didn't, it couldn't have just wiggled its way through. I would have seen it, and the opening is, is too small for it to anyway. I mean, they can, but it takes them a minute, and they move the wire. They spread the wire into a hole, and I went there to look at that section of the fence, and there's no wire moved to make a hole for a fawn to get through. But
Wow.
it didn't hesitate. It didn't look like it was pushing its, squirming its way through woven wire. It just went through there like effortlessly, and then it got to the other side of that fence and then just disappeared.
Wow.
It was gone. I'm like, are you kidding me? I just saw a phantom fawn. I'm like, there's no way that wasn't a real fawn at all. It just real physical fawns don't disappear like that.
Right.
So I felt really sad because I can only imagine what that fawn went through after its mom had gotten hit, probably the night before. And it had probably, I wonder if it was residual
energy or
yeah, because this fawn may have been wandering the fields for hours and hours, bleeding for its mom,
yeah.
calling for its mother, and then it finally found her up the road, only to have gotten hit by a car itself.
Wow.
And then I saw the residual energy of it after the fact. So
Wow.
that's really super weird.
Yeah, it's been a little bit heartbreaking. So, what
Yeah.
is neat for the folks at home, and you'll see, I'll mention this one last time in the episode that's coming up in season 3 of Bigfoots of Michigan. This is Brenda, this is all within 1 square mile of each other, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everything we've just talked about and everything in your episode, which will come out, in season 3, this is
Yeah.
all within 1 square mile
Yeah.
with at first I thought, well, maybe Brenda just has the spiritual sight to see all these things. But no, your neighbors are seeing stuff, your mother's
So
seeing
my
stuff.
mom's hearing wood knocks and everything. Yeah. Well, and the only exception is the guy further down the road, closer to closer to a little river and a lake.
Okay.
The one that with the pond and the poo and the
Right,
and the
yeah, because
orbs.
we don't want to give out
He's
locations.
about 3 miles down the road.
Okay, but still,
So, but
my
everything else,
goodness.
yes, within a mile of each other.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I had, well, after you came down here in July, after you left, I had forgotten to tell you about a week before you came, was closing my blinds in the living room, and between the house and there's a fence line there. I saw something real odd. It looked like a misty figure, sort of. And then I'm like, what is that? And then it just dispersed. It was gone. So I don't know if I was
Wow.
seeing an apparition, or if it almost looked like just a disbursement of air or something. So I don't know. It could have been a cloaked Bigfoot
Yeah,
moving just a little bit.
without a doubt.
The Predator movie, where you see that just little, where he's cloaked and you can't really see it. until
Yep.
till it moves, and then you can just see a little transparency and displacement of air is how I describe it. But there's kind of like that what I was seeing. So I just like
Wow.
close my blinds. I'm like, okay, whatever, because I mean, this stuff is happening all the time, and like the hawk that landed right by my tractor and brush hog as I was brush hogging the tractor last summer, and then this hawk was in my yard. I don't know, maybe a month ago, was in the yard, and then because I was heading to my mom's to feed at that barn, feed the horses there, and so I loaded up my dog, and by the time I was driving down the driveway, it had flown from the yard to the power line right in front of the house, and it was facing the house. Then I slowed down in the driveway, started taking pictures of it, and then it did an about face and faced the road. And then I got further down the driveway. I put my camera aside so I could drive. And then I got out on the road. It had flown from that wire, and it flew over to another wire at the corner. And then right before I turned the corner, it like kind of flew and hopped. It was just a short little flight. It hopped around the corner of this pole on this wire in between the pole and this like tennis racket style turnbuckle thing, or not turnbuckle, but just apparatus that the power company has up there,
Mm-hmm.
and was right there in between that on the stretch of wire. And as I was turning the corner, it was looking right down straight at me. It was just, I mean, looking me in the eyes as I was turning the corner. I'm like, all I could think to say was, "Hi, I know you." I don't know. Yeah, I
Yeah.
talk to animals. Yeah. So,
Well,
um,
there's the narrative that, Sasquatch watch through the eyes of eagles,
yeah,
hawks, and ravens. So who knows?
yeah. I think they keep an eye on me somehow or other.
I
Yeah.
think I, I gotta be honest, Brenda. I think I'm gonna be wanting to come back to your property and just getting the bag chairs out and where we had that interview underneath the tree, just kind of set up and hang out and listen one night. Just kind of stay the whole night, and I want to hear what's going on at nighttime. If I can hear any
Yeah.
howls or any
Well,
kind of
I've heard
activity.
some odd nighttime bird sounds. Um, and I hear some odd owl sounds too that don't
There you
quite
go.
sound like owls. Um, I think I told you about the I think they're mimicking the horses as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and because they heard a nicker um, from on the other side of the drain ditch, um, where there's another horse pasture there, and I had my horse in with those horses, and so they know each other. So it just, to me, it sounded like just, that horse, and I know that horse is nicker. You can, when you know them, you can tell their sounds, the sounds of them. And it was this gelding of my mom's, and it sounded like he was just on the other side of the fence, which was right on the other side of the drain ditch from where my horse was in the pasture with the one she is now. And which there's a lot of foliage there. You can't see it, in the summertime when the foliage grows up, but I could hear it. I can tell where the sound was coming from. And then I was walking back, and then I got a view of the pasture, and further out into the, much further away from the drain ditch into the pasture out further were those two horses. I'm like, really? that 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 noise, that horse was not that close to the drain ditch. That if he nickered to my horse, I wouldn't have heard it as close.
Right. Right.
I would be able to tell that he was further out. So that was not that horse that nickered to my horse.
Wow.
So
So some mimicking going on.
yeah, and then I said something. I walked back and I looked. I'm like, that's not Casper. That's the name of the
Wow.
horse. So that's not him. And then I heard a weird bird sound, and I'm like, yeah, okay, from the same spot. And
Wow.
then I walked back out and I looked. I wanted to make sure that that horse was still where I saw it, and those two horses were still where I saw them. And I said, "Well, I tell you what, I'll find out. I'll be finding out." And then I heard a grunt, and it was more like like a bear grunt or pig grunt or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I wasn't a deer,
Yeah.
but
I gotta
it wasn't
admit,
a deer grunt. I hear like deer grunts and stuff like that and snorts. Sometimes I startle a deer. They snort at me like horses will snort, when they're startled. But yeah, it wasn't a deer grunt. I said, okay, well, have a good night. I said, thanks for not harming the horses.
right.
So
Yeah. You've lived in that area since you were a little girl.
yeah,
I just think they know you. They are familiar with you and they watch you. And
yeah.
yeah, I gotta admit, you live at the Michigan Skinwalker Ranch. Wow.
Yeah, well, and considering what happened to my horse in earlier in the spring, Easter Sunday, it was Easter well, that evening it was Easter. I remember it was Easter Sunday though. But also about a week after I found the prints in the horses pasture um last December, about a week after, there was some um fallen trees, very odd fallen trees one morning, which just happened overnight, and it hadn't stormed or we didn't have high winds. And the only reason I noticed them was because they were all there were so many downed trees that just appeared overnight. Basically, they were downed.
Oh
And
wow.
then I looked further into, and it's someone else's property, so I can't, go investigate. But further
Right.
into the woods, where you can see from the road a little bit without the foliage being there, there's a tree that it looks like it might have been cut off, but it's about 5 feet high. I don't know if it cut off or broke off. I can't tell, but it's pretty flat across. But I wonder, why would someone cut off a tree that high? If they're going to cut a tree
Hmm.
down, why wouldn't they cut it down lower to the ground? Anyway, but around this stump, I'll call it, this stump that's about 5 foot high, around this stump, there's trees knocked down, what it looks like in every direction, north, south, east, west, from every direction from where the stump is at. It looks like the stump is the center of this phenomenon, I guess, if you want to call that. But yeah, trees are pushed down to the north, south, east, west, all over. And you can't see it this time of year because the foliage is too thick. But I did get some better pictures. I pulled off to the side of the road and got some pictures that you can see just a couple, two or three of the trees down in different
Okay.
directions.
Yeah, I'd like
But
to see that.
yeah, I'll send you a picture of that. I can like draw draw a little picture around the center stump. But when I saw that the wood knock tree at my mom's, that tree has a tree fallen, resting on it, and then there's a tree across from that tree's fallen to the south. There's a tree across from that that's fallen to the north, and the foliage is so thick in there, I can't tell if there's trees fallen to the east or the west in there because the foliage
Okay.
is just too thick, and there's too many briars. I hate briars. I think they're just horrible plants.
You're telling
Yeah,
me.
scratchy,
Gosh.
scratchy.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was odd. So yeah, the only reason I know, and then there's just kind of, there were other random trees knocked over, but not necessarily in a pattern form, but they were closer to the corner. But all of it just, like appeared overnight. Had it just happened randomly, one by one, I wouldn't have noticed them.
All right. Or after a storm. Right. Right.
Yeah, or after a storm. If it was after a storm, I would have thought, oh, wow, that must have been some high winds knocked all those down. But yeah, there wasn't a storm that night before. We didn't have high winds. But yeah, so the fact that there are lots of other trees closer to the corner that, you could see better. And then there were a couple that were balancing a couple long sticks, well, not real long, about maybe 4 or 5 feet long, balancing on other branches. And I thought,
Wow.
well, that's awful weird that they've fallen and they're balancing on another branch of the tree.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
mean that
really
all
weird. There was a couple
that sounds like
balancing branches.
yeah, that sounds like Bigfoot activity, whether they're showing their own strength to each other or
Or they're
just
trying to
messing
get
with the
my
trees.
attention, I wondered,
Ooh, interesting.
because it was, like I said, it was about a week after I found the prints.
Okay.
Yeah. And it
Interesting.
had, yeah, I mean, it had snowed, it had melted, it had snowed, it had melted, it had done that, a number of times. And that actually, the very night after I found the prints, there wasn't any snow on the ground when I found the prints. There was a few days before, and that very night after I found the prints, then it snowed again. And then, yeah, about a week later is when I saw the downed trees,
Yeah.
just kitty corner from me. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I almost, I almost wonder if they must know that I found their prints, and
Yeah, could be.
maybe that was some way of, getting my attention.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
I think they're definitely watching you, Brenda. All right, is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
um I don't know, Brian. There's just so much.
I know, and that's why
so
I'm
so
excited.
so much.
I'm totally excited because you're going to have ongoing evidence and
Yeah.
encounters, and so yeah, it's funny because I feel like this is just the first step of what's going on at the Michigan Skinwalker Ranch where you live.
Well, and then, well, did I tell you I was walking from the barn back to the house, and it wasn't windy out or anything, but I was feeling something rubbing my forearm,
Oh my
just my right
gosh!
one, not my left one. It almost felt like, when when the hairs on you get goosebumps and your hairs
Yep.
stick up, but it was even a little more physical than that. Even felt
Oh, a
like I
little
was
bit
being
more pressure.
petted or something, but it was
Wow.
just my right arm, and it wasn't windy out. And then I got closer to the steps and it stopped. And my dog was already on the deck. So she was like up
Wow.
ahead. But and I was walking past the tree, walking past the tire swing tree. When that happened, I'm like,
Wow.
you got to be kidding me. Something's touching me.
That's crazy. All right, Brenda. If people want to contact you, where do they get a hold of you at? On Facebook, on Messenger?
Um, they can just, if they have any questions, they can just contact me in the BOM private group if they want.
There you go. Yeah, that's the just to clarify, that is the Bigfoots of Michigan, Bigfoots of America podcast show private group. If you get on Facebook, search for that. You do have to answer the questions or you won't be able to get in. That's the way we vet. You answer the questions and we check out your profile just to make sure you're a real person. And you get into that group and then you'll have access to me, you'll have access to Brenda and our other moderators. So, hey, Brenda, thanks for coming on. I know you kind of
Thank
thought
you.
like you didn't have much to say because we had already filmed the TV episode, but this is a whole different platform. And so we want to hear it from the get-go, just like you gave it. So thank you so much for being on. I'm going to go
Thank
ahead
you
and
for
put you.
having me.
Oh, definitely. I'm going to go ahead and
Well,
put
and
you
I
back.
and I wanted to mention the other incident for them to watch that episode for that incident with my horse that I didn't mention today,
Okay, cool.
because that's something that, before you even came, I didn't know even quite how to explain it to you until you got here to
Right.
explain it to you in person what happened with her.
Hmm.
So that,
I
that was
gotcha.
kind of a mind-blowing thing.
Yeah,
And just,
without a doubt.
some other strange activity that had happened this year so far. But yeah,
Cool.
I just at this point I almost, I'm used to it. I expect it now
And I
by
can't
this
wait to
time.
hear more. I can't wait to hear more. All right, Brenda, I'm going to go ahead and put you back in the green room. I'll
Okay.
talk to you. Stay right there, and I'll be in the green room in a second.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye bye. All right, everybody. There you have it. Brenda Goodwin and the Michigan Skinwalker Ranch. So happy to have her on. You're also going to see everything in our TV episode of season 3. That'll probably come out just after the first of the year. So yeah, check that out as well. And we'll hook you guys up with all the links and how to connect with everything. Our YouTube channel is Bigfoots of America or Bigfoots of Michigan. You can punch in either. Get on there. You can see our episodes from season 1 and season 2, kind of catch up before we release season 3. You can also go to the Channel 12 TV network. That's a new app streaming platform like a Hulu or a Tubi. You can check that out. We'll put a link there. Just get into our groups, follow us, and you'll be able to get all of that information. So, hey, everybody out there, thanks for tuning in. The Michigan Skinwalker Ranch with Brenda Goodwin. And as always, stay tuned for more of the Bigfoots of America podcast show.